Right, let's kick off. So, firstly, a very good afternoon. Today is the 23rd of May, and we are joined today by Laszlo, who is from Disznókő. Is that pronounced Disznókő? Trying to get the pronouncing. Disznókő, winery in Tokaj that make our fantastic late harvest Tokaj that we sell by the glass across the Hotel de Van estate. So we've entered into the last 5 sessions for this year's May wine month. We've got a session every day this week, Tuesday through to Friday, and then our last session next Tuesday with gents from Tasmania who make our premium rosé on the By the Bottle list. But without further ado, I will hand over to Laszlo. Laszlo, thank you so much indeed for joining us today, and please feel free to take over and share your presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this presentation. I'm very happy, and I'm sitting in our tasting room. I'm in front of the vineyard, and I'm going to talk about this wine, Disznókő Late Harvest 2020. But before talking about this wine, I would like to give you a quite detailed background on Tokaj, on the varieties of Tokaj, on the vinification, and on Disznókő, of course. Now I'm sharing my presentation. Can you see it?
Yep, we just loaded the PowerPoint, so let's get it on presenter view.
Is it good? Can you see?
Yeah, you just need to click on presenter and we're good to go. We're seeing the PowerPoint open in PowerPoint.
It's not. You cannot see.
We can see the slides. It's just not in presenter view. So
okay. So what should I do? It's
the same as what you did earlier. The little presenter button at the bottom, just by the negative sign. That one just there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. No.
I'm still seeing it.
Yeah, it's good. No.
Might just be a bit delayed. Are you? Let me just stop. Just try sharing it again. Just share it as share screen, and then click the, because I think it might have shared the. There we go. There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
We're on. Yeah, that's no. Don't apologize. That's perfect. Well done.
So the first slide will be about. I can move the slides.
You can't. You should be able to. You should be able to just click through if it's on presentation.
And that's fine.
There we go. Yep, that's it. Perfect.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
So we are now in Hungary, and I know that few people know a lot about Hungarian wines in the UK and in the world in general. So Hungary is in Central Europe. It's a continental country. We don't have any sea, and we are surrounded by 7 countries. Austria from the west, Romania from the east, and it's a relatively small country with Budapest as a capital, and our wine region Tokaj is situated in the northeast of the country. So we are about 250 kilometers from Budapest, very close to the border with Slovakia, and quite close to Ukraine as well. So Ukraine is about like 150 kilometers from Tokaj as the crow flies. And Hungary is a wine country. It's a traditional wine producing country. Indeed, the western part of Hungary, so this is the Danube River in the middle that crosses Budapest, and the left bank of the Danube was a former Roman provincia called Pannonia, and then and here winemaking is practiced since the antique times, the Roman times, and the Danube was the limit of the Roman Empire, and the other side of the Danube was the country of the barbarians. So it was the country of the Huns and different nomadic people, and here the winemaking started in the early Middle Ages. So Tokaj is in the eastern part of the country, and as you might know, Tokaj is the oldest delimited wine region in the world. Its delimitation dates back to 1737. It was delimited by a royal decree. And in fact, it has a very logical delimitation because its borders are natural borders. We have the northern border of the wine region is the Tokaj Hills, Zemplén Hills. The eastern border is a river called the Bodrog. And from the south, we have the Great Hungarian Plain, which is a huge plain, several hundreds of kilometers. The name of the wine region is Tokaj because there is a small town in the southern part of the wine region called Tokaj, which was the former commercial center of the region. And the Hungarian name is Tokaj Hegyalja, and Hegyalja means foothills because the vineyards are situated on the southern and eastern slopes of the volcanic hills. So it's very important to highlight that Tokaj is a volcanic wine region. It was created between 20 and 8 million years ago by several volcanic activities. And on these volcanic base stones, we have a very great diversity of mostly clay soils. Tokaj covers now about 5,500 hectares. It's about 2 times bigger than Sauternes in terms of surface. And the production of Tokaj is very wide. You only have dry wines here. The climate is continental. It means that we have normally very cold and quite long winters and very hot and dry summers. The average rainfall is very low. It's around between 500 and 550 millimeters. This very continental climate is slightly influenced by the proximity of the 2 rivers, the Bodrog and the Tisza, and also the marshland that are very close to the region. In fact, the left bank of the Bodrog is a sort of marshland with a lot of oxbow lake, and it's very often flooded. In Tokaj, we only have white grapes for the appellation, and we have now 6 authorized varieties. The 2 most important varieties are local varieties, autochthon varieties, and the most important variety is called the Furmint. Furmint, which can be considered as a variety that was selected here in the Tokaj wine region. It covers about 60% of the whole area, and this is the variety that is the most often used for sweet Tokaj styles, but also a variety that is very often used to make dry Tokaj and even sparkling Tokaj now. So now we also have a sparkling style in Tokaj. The Formint became the most important variety because it is very sensible for noble rot, for botrytis. It has a quite thin skin. It has a compact bunch. It is a late ripening variety, and it keeps its acidity, its freshness, even when it overripes, even when it's botrytized. And this is very important for the balance of the sweet wines. In Disznókő, the Formint represents about 70% of the varieties. The second variety is called hárslevelű. It's probably a more difficult name to pronounce. Hárslevelű is a variety with a little bit bigger and looser cluster than the Formint. It is also a late ripening variety, but the skin of the grape is thicker. Therefore, it's less sensible for botrytis. On the other hand, it's a more aromatic variety that can give a very good contribution for the aromatic profile of the Tokaj wines. So these two varieties, Formint and hárslevelű, represents 90% of the whole area. And then we have 4 other varieties. We have a Muscat, which is the same type of Muscat as the Muscat Petit Grain, the same as you can find in the south of France. We have a variety called Zeta, which is a quite new variety, a cross between Formint and Bouvier. Bouvier is an Austrian variety with very early ripening. And then we have a variety called Kabar, which is also a cross, but between hárslevelű and Bouvier. And the last variety is called Kövér Szőlő, which is an old variety that represents just maybe 1% of the appellation. So 6 varieties, but from the 6 varieties, we make a very complex wine range, depending on when, in which stage, and how we pick the grapes. So we can say that in Tokaj, we can make 4 styles. We can make sparkling, which is a quite new appellation for the region. I don't speak about sparkling because it's not very important for us. We can also make, of course, dry Tokaj, which is very important for the region and for Disznókő as well. We can make late harvest or édes szamorodni. It's basically the same type of harvest and vinification. It's a harvest when the clusters that we select contain overripe, botrytis affected, noble rot affected berries in different proportions with healthy berries. And then we can make the Tokaj Iasu, which is the most unique and most prestigious sweet wine of Tokaj, which is made of 1 by 1 selected, very concentrated, botrytized berries. So from the same vineyard, we can make these styles. So this is the range of Disznókő wines. So we have 2 dry wines. We have a dry Formint, which is a very fruity, unoaked, crisp dry wine. We have a wine called Inspiration, which is very often a blend between Formint and hárslevelű. It's barrel fermented, barrel aged with a more textured wine with more aging potential. And then we have the 2 late harvest styles. The late harvest, which is a very fruity, fresh, enjoyable sweet wine. We have a wine called 1413, which from the édes szamorodni appellation. So this is the traditional late harvest of Tokaj with a little bit more concentration than the late harvest and more barrel aging. And then we have Tokai Yasu 5 and 6 Plutonyos, and Tokai Essencia. So this is the classic range for Disznókő, but this is also the range that you can find at the most of the Tokai wineries. So as I mentioned, the most important, the most unique sweet wine of Tokai is the Tokai Yasu, which is made of what we call the Asu berry, which is a grape that have botrytis. And after the botrytization, there is a very quick desiccation. So the grapes become almost like raisins with practically no juice inside. So it's a combination of noble rot, botrytis, and desiccation. So these are the grapes that we pick one by one in order to make the Tokai Yasu. The reason why we have these very concentrated grapes is that first we have some morning mist, because the vineyards are very close to the Hungarian plain. And as I mentioned before, we have a lot of water on the plain. We have rivers and marshland, and we have morning mist from September. And this morning mist emphasizes the development of the botrytis. And on the other hand, as I also mentioned, that it's a very dry continental climate region with long after season, and also windy, dry weather during September and October. So the botrytis affected berries can be desiccated, dried very quickly. So this is the reason why we have this type of noble rot. So if we compare it, for example, with Sauterne, which is probably the most well-known sweet wine in the world, we have less intense botrytis sometimes, but we have much more concentration and much more desiccation in our grapes. So this is you see that this is the beginning of this botrytization. It happens from the middle of September until the end of September. And when we have this stage, we need like a week or 10 days, and the grapes can be completely desiccated, and they become like the one you can see on the right. You see the fungus, you see the botrytis, but you see also that it's completely dried out. There is no juice inside. So this is really a very unique way of noble rot here in Tokai. And so this is the picture you can see. This is a very typical cluster in the end of September. You see in the middle of the cluster the Asu berries that are already ready to be selected, to be picked. But you see that the other berries, they are slightly botrytized or completely healthy. So it means that for the first selection, we will pick those berries in the middle, and 10 days after, we can have a second selection to pick the other berries around, and then if we have nice weather, we can have a third berry by berry selection from the same cluster. So when we pick these grapes, the cluster will remain on the vine, and our pickers only remove these grapes one by one, berry by berry. So this picking is, of course, extremely labor intensive, and it takes a lot of time. Usually our harvest starts from middle of September until middle of November, and we can make 3-4 passages in the same vineyard. So the Asu picking is probably the less efficient picking in the world. So one picker can select between 6 to 10 kilograms of grapes per day. It means that the box that you can see at the bottom of the right is about 20 kilograms. And this is the result of 2 or 3 pickers per day. And so I still talk about the ASO vinification, which is the most unique. So these grapes that we pick, we put them in containers. We keep them in containers until the end of the harvest without any intervention. The only things that happens during the storage is that at the bottom of each container, each vat, we can obtain through a small tap the free-run juice of these botrytized berries, and this free-run juice is called essentia. Essentia, which is a sort of very thick nectar having from 600 to 900 grams of sugar per liter. It's sometimes really a honey-like elixir, almost solid, very viscous, very thick. And then at the end of the harvest, we start the vinification of our ASU wines. And the principle of the vinification is a skin contact. It means that we mix our very dried, botrytized ASU berries together with fermenting must or fermenting wine, or it can be also finished wine, to make a skin contact, a maceration, in order to rehydrate the berries and to extract the sugars, the flavors, the acids out of the berries. So this is a vinification by skin contact. It's almost like making red wines. It's vinification, it's maceration and fermentation at the same time. And we extract, of course, the sugars and acids, but also some polyphenols, some tannins, it gives the wine a sort of tannic structure, which is very important for the Tokaji ASU wines. And then we press the grapes, and then we continue the vinification until reaching the alcohol that we would like to have. And after the vinification, the wines are aged in barrels for 2 years. So this is about the ASU vinification, and the late harvest is also wine made of botrytis affected berries. But here, unlike for the Tokaji ASU, the selection is not by berry, but by clusters or part of clusters. And these clusters can be pressed directly, or they can be also destemmed and having a short maceration before pressing. And then the pressed juice is after cold settling, fermented in tanks or barrel, and after fermentation we have a barrel aging. So this is almost made as a classic sweet wine, almost like in Sautern or in like Beerenauslese in Germany, or a Wandernstärdive in Alsace. So the same type of vinification. So if we make a fruity, very fresh style with less barrel aging, we select these wines for late harvest. If we make a slightly more concentrated wines with much more barrel aging, we select these lots for the Édes Samorodni appellation. And I'm coming back a little bit later for the wine. Just a few information on Disznókő. So Disznókő is one of the most important estate of the region. It's a one-piece vineyard. We have more than 150 hectares in one piece. From that, we have 112 hectares of vines, and every Disznókő wine is made of the grapes, the fruits of Disznókő vineyard. Disznókő vineyard was always one of the most prestigious sites of Tokaj. It was before it was owned by different Hungarian and Austrian noble families. Then after the Second World War, it was nationalized. So it was government controlled and everything during the communist Hungary. And after the political changes in the middle of the 90s, it was bought by AXA Millésime. AXA Millésime, which is a French wine group based in Bordeaux. They are also the owners of Chateau Pichon Baron in Pauillac, Chateau Sudiro in Sauternes, Domaine de l'Arlot in Nuit Saint-Georges, Quintana-Novel in the Douro Valley, and now they also have 2 wines in California, one in Napa Outpost, and a new one in Sonoma Plat Vineyard. So Disznókő is situated in the southern part of the Tokaj region, very close to Mád and Tarcal. And the name Disznókő is a very old name. It dates back to 1413. So 1413 is the first written mention of the Disznókő name. And Disznókő means the rock of the white boar in English. There are different explanations because we have a lot of rocks in the soil, but there is a big one. And people think that the estate was named after this big stone that you can see on the top of one of the hills of the estate. So after 1992, AXA made a lot of investment, replanting, building a new winery, making the commercial network. So it's still a lot of work for the replanting of the vineyard, and it's really a beautiful terroir with a lot of terraces, a lot of walls. It's worth to visit. And inside the Disznókő vineyard, there are different historical plots called Hangács, Kapi, Dorgó, with different soils, with different expositions. But most of the expositions are south-facing, and there we have everywhere a volcanic base stone. But depending on the sites, in some places we have more clay soils with bigger rocks, which is very common on the eastern part of the estate, and the central part of the estate has a lighter clay soil with a lot of small volcanic pebbles with very high magnesium content. So this volcanic character of the wine is very important for the Disznókő wine. So this is one of the soil profile. So we have a rhyolite, tufa, perlite, base stone. We have some clay layers, and then we have small volcanic pebbles on the top. So the wine that we are tasting today is a late harvest 2020. So late harvest is a very important wine in the portfolio of Disznókő. It represents a very important volume of the production, and we consider the late harvest as a sort of introduction to our great sweet wines. It's a wine with very affordable taste. It's made of, as I mentioned, it's made of botrytis affected berries that were pressed directly, and usually we make the fermentation in stainless steel in order to keep the fruitiness and the freshness. And then after the fermentation, the wine is aged in oak barrels for a few months in order to make the wine more opened. But we don't look for oakiness, influence in the wine. So the current vintage that we have just released is 2020. It was a vintage with a lot of botrytis. We have more botrytis character here than in the previous vintages. Botrytis means for us very citrusy, zesty notes with a lot of apricot flavors, and the mouth is quite mouth-filling with very fresh acidity and with silky, creamy character. And the finish is very clean. The finish is not very sweet. It's almost dry, with some spices, with the little elegant bitterness coming for the botrytis, and and the balance where you almost forget the sugar. So it's of course a sweet wine, but where the sweetness is not overhanging at all. So this wine we like to drink as an aperitif as well. So at home, I like to drink it when I have friends at home, with almonds, with salamis, with light cheeses. But it's also very good with every type of spicy food, like Oriental food, but also with a pork belly, with some minty flavorings. And also it can be very nice with lighter desserts, fruit-based, especially like white fruit-based desserts. So it was a lot of information. I think I'm out of my time, and there are a lot of things to talk about, to tell about Tokaj and Disznókő, but I'm looking forward to your comments, to your questions.
There's just one question. We are tight on time, so there's just one question on the chat, Laszlo, which is just around the aging potential of the wines. Obviously, I'm conscious that will vary depending on the style of wine. But if we focus on the late harvest, which is obviously what we list at Hotel de Vin, what is the aging potential of the late harvest?
So we don't consider the late harvest as a wine that you should age. So this is a wine you can drink right now, and also we recommend to drink this wine relatively young to enjoy its very fresh and fruity character. And also we have a quite quick rotation of the vintages. So now we have 2020, and there were 21 being bottled before the end of summer. But of course, you can also age it. So it is capable to be aged for 10, 15 years or even more at least. But if we recommend someone to age the wine, we would recommend to age the Édes Samorodni rather than the late harvest. But you can age it well. But if you would like to buy a case for some occasion to drink later, I would recommend the 14-13 or the 5 or 6 Putenyos Tokajasu.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other questions before we wrap it up? There's a few people on the chat. Any other questions before we close out? Very thorough presentation, Laszlo. Thank you very much indeed. And it's a wine growing region that we talk about a lot in both brands, Malmaison and Hotel de Vin, and we have a Tokaj on both brands, but it's probably not a wine growing region that our teams know too much about. So it's a really interesting presentation, and we really appreciate your time today.
I think in a few words, what I would like really to underline that the Tokaj is of course a traditional old wine region, but with a very modern approach. And after the 90s, we had really a comeback, a renaissance in the region, making very fresh wines from volcanic soils, volcanic terroirs. And today there are many producers from Tokaj. Every producer has its own style. Disznókő style is very much on this very fresh, fruity character. Our sweet wines taste less sweet than the most of the other Tokaj sweet wines, and I consider these wines not just dessert wines, but as much savory wines and wines to enjoy with dishes by its own as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much indeed. Really interesting. Guys, as we know, there's only 4 sessions left for the end of the month. tomorrow, the 24th of May, is Anthony from the Symington family. So Anthony Symington, who's going to be talking about the Jura Valley, and in particular the wines that we list from the Jura Valley, the still wines that we list from the Jura Valley. So hopefully see many of you on tomorrow's call as we approach the end of this themed May wine month. So finally, Laszlo, on behalf of Hotel de Van, thank you so much for joining us today. Really informative session, and guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.